Hey, it's Jordan with the Young Turks, and I'm here again with Dr. Jill Stein. We're at the main overflow camp where folks from all around the country are here to show their support with the tribes that are fighting this Dakota Access Pipeline. Saw you earlier today over at a construction site that successfully stopped building through the force of two tribes, men and women, that put their bodies on the line. Talk about just the sites you've seen, and kind of what comes to mind in terms of the real struggle here.
It's really a historic gathering because the crisis is historic. The crisis of our water, of indigenous sovereignty, the crisis of the climate, which we're just seeing all over the place now. California, Washington fires, flooding in Louisiana, heat, record heat everywhere. And it's historic as a gathering of indigenous people who've come together from, I hear, over 150, 160 tribes, many of whom have not had any contact for centuries because they are historic enemies. They've sort of left that behind and come together to fight this critical struggle to protect Mother Earth and our water supply. And it's so inspirational that the kind of unity and focus and purpose that they have, but also not just towards each other, but towards all of us, including, us white folks who have such a history of abuse, massacre, genocide towards the indigenous people. There is such a welcoming and loving just atmosphere here. It's really quite transformative, and you can see it all around you, and you feel like, this is destiny, that we're coming together. In fact, they have prophecies, from centuries ago that around now that the indigenous people would be coming together from all corners of the earth to save the planet, to save Mother Earth. And that does seem to be what is happening, and the determination is absolutely unstoppable.
We've talked about the kind of awakening that's happened in this election about pretty much the revolving door, corporations, banks, the lobbyists, the media. There also seems to be an awakening now among white folk. We grew up and we knew our Native American history, but really the struggle that still continues. And I'm getting so many comments like, I feel awful, ashamed. As I watched this ceremony yesterday, part of me felt love and part of me felt like, Jesus Christ, I really didn't even know some of the even basic things that these people are still fighting for and struggling for. A gentleman broke down in tears, a tribesman telling America to wake up, and talking about, we sacrificed for this country, we forgave this country. So do you think, not just here, but what you're seeing across the country, there's an awakening to the Native American plight?
Not as much as there needs to be, but there is the beginnings of it. And, it's not only a history of genocide, of land theft, but of continuing poverty and hopelessness that afflicts indigenous communities, and that badly needs to be addressed. We need a forum for reparations to compensate the indigenous people for what has been taken from them. We need to respect their treaty rights. We have signed treaties with them, and we need to respect those treaties, and especially to respect their water and their land and protect it from these illegitimate toxic pipelines like the Dakota Access Pipeline, which is, it desecrated their sacred sites. Just out of gratuitous brutality, the bulldozers came through, and in the middle of the night, without warning, they resumed action after having suspended it and having caught everyone unawares. They woke up to discover that the bulldozers had basically trashed many miles worth of grave sites. It's just unthinkable what they've done, not to mention, their water supplies, which is being put at risk, not to mention the whole agreement and the the Army Corps of Engineers provided this permit to go ahead and start building without consulting the indigenous communities whose water supply is going to be trashed by this, because the Missouri River gets crossed by this pipeline, which is carrying a huge amount of extremely polluting Bakken oil that has a history of breaking pipelines and flooding rivers and permanently polluting them.
And after the fact, President Obama came out saying he was in support of the restraining order for this, but that was after this happened.
And he also, after the fact, said that it was time to begin a climate test, that any Army Corps of Engineer permit should have to pass a climate test to ensure that that it's not endangering the climate. Well, why did he wait to 1 week following the biggest assault on the climate of any pipeline project since the Keystone? What hypocrisy is this, to come out and pretend to be the good guy who's doing the right thing here for climate, but oops, somehow I just missed the deadline on this devastating toxic pipeline that will carry over 500,000 barrels of this very toxic Bakken fuel oil. Not only that it's harmful to the water and to air pollution, but the climate cannot take it. The climate is kind of on life support right now. We need to be reducing our fossil fuel emissions, not massively increasing them by allowing for this incredible, massive extraction through the Dakota Access Pipeline. And the other piece of this was that the indigenous communities are required to provide, or shall we say the pipelines are required to have informed consent to any project that's going to significantly impact the welfare and the survival and the health of indigenous communities. And they did not factor into the plans here whatsoever. They were not consulted. It seems like there was another route that was planned that was going to put the water supply at risk for the white folks in Bismarck. And then suddenly they didn't want that, so suddenly it was moved into indigenous territory, and the plans were quickly adapted without consulting the community. So that violates really international law, and on many counts this permit needs to be withdrawn.
So earlier you were by a construction site that was successfully stopped for the day, and if I'm being honest, some of the protectors, they call them, I think they have anger at politicians in general, so kind of threw a little shade at you, kind of asking specifically, what are you going to do? We're tired of empty rhetoric.
We don't have the authority to prosecute those who rape us.
That's right.
What are you going to do about that as president?
We need to ensure that you have the authority to prosecute those, that women have the authority, whether they are indigenous women or Caucasian women or women of any origin, have the authority to prosecute their rapists.
The courts are the ones that stripped us of that sovereignty, though, that sovereign right. What are you going to do as the executive?
So meaning strip the indigenous communities of that right? Yes.
We cannot prosecute non-native offenders because of the courts.
Well, that's outrageous. Yeah. I mean, and that needs to be overturned. And yes, I mean, put it this way. I would not get into the White House unless there were a large movement, a very big social movement with a very big voice. If a lot of oppressed and marginalized people say enough is enough, and we are taking back this promise of democracy that has never been extended to indigenous communities. What democracy?
First time here?
It is my first time to North Dakota. I've been to South Dakota as part of the struggle against the mines.
When was that?
Approximately a year and a half ago, as part of the effort to clean up the mines.
Okay, you know this fight's
and
been
the
going on since
radioactive
April.
pollution. I'm sorry?
You know this fight's been going on since April, actually before that.
So if you're president specifically, how do you actually start implementing, honoring treaties, which seems like but it's not a simple thing anymore apparently, and how do you find funds for things like reparations, and there's also the matter of tribeswomen being raped and kidnapped and all these things. How does that happen?
Right, so we need to ensure that women on reservations have the legal right and authority to prosecute their their assaulters from off of the reservation, and they are prevented from doing that now. So that should not be rocket science to fix that. I mean, that is just a matter of plain basic justice, and we need to have an organizer in the White House who is not shy about standing up for women's rights and not shy about standing up for indigenous rights. One of the ways we pay for things like reparations to the indigenous communities or respecting their treaties and the things that we need to do is we transition immediately, as fast as possible, to a healthy fossil fuel banning. We need to ban fossil fuels and begin building a Green New Deal, 100% clean renewable energy. And that includes, well, or shall we say, one of the things that enables, we get a whole lot healthier. So healthy, in fact, that the savings alone from eliminating fossil fuel pollution is enough to pay the costs of the green energy transition. But also by going green, we make the wars for oil obsolete. So that too frees up a huge amount of money, hundreds of billions of dollars, that we have to put into caring for our nation here, including black, brown, and red people in this country, instead of bombing black and brown people around the world. We need to demilitarize our foreign policy, and we can do that as part of moving to 100% clean renewable energy. They go hand in hand.
And congratulations, you apparently are on the ballot today in North Dakota, so that's been added. Thanks for taking the time again. Appreciate it.
Talking with you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.